There's only two men that I trust in this world. One of them is Nicolas Cage, and the other is not you. Hello, interwebs. I hope you're all doing well, and I am here to review the latest film that I've seen, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And sadly, it is not a documentary about my life, though it, well, could have been. But it is about someone almost as equally talented as myself, and that is the wonderful Nicolas Cage. Yes, the actor who is probably the most memed and, culturally discussed American tradition actor that there is, Nicolas Cage. I mean, I remember, and maybe all of you remember this as well, back in college, it was the time when that video that became viral of, the compilation of all of Nicolas Cage's most out there and bonkers performances, out of context performances went out, and my friends and I in college just constantly, referencing and quoting it and just having a bunch of time just basically memeing Nicolas Cage for pretty much 4 years of college. And actually one of my favorite memories from college, now that I think about it, and I'm just going on a nostalgia trip at this point, so just stick with me on this Nicolas Cage train. I swear we'll get to the movie. But I remember a bunch of my friends, we just drunkenly snuck into a screening of Ghost Rider 2 that we did not pay to see. And it was just the five of us all drunk off our butts and two people who were sitting in the front row who were just there to earnestly watch the movie and just had to listen to us laughing our butts off the entire film. And us just quoting that movie and Nicolas Cage's fan-frickin-tastic performance in it throughout the entire next year of our lives. It's gonna come out. He's scraping at the door. It's great stuff. I love Nicolas Cage, and again, I believe all of you do too. And bring it back to the actual review at hand, a lot of those moments, that cultural memed understanding of Nicolas Cage is brought into this film. For those of you who have not heard of what The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is about, it's literally a movie where Nicolas Cage plays himself in the very memeified, over-the-top understanding of who he is as an actor. All the jokes that we have made about Nicolas Cage over the past decade, 2 decades is in here, him being an over-the-top actor, him also being an actor who takes his work very seriously as a thespian who just really thinks about every single aspect of it and yet still gives these amazingly over-the-top bombastic performances. And yet he also is a decently good actor as well, but also a person who's been down on his luck and taking way too many projects, movies like Ghost Rider 2 or Season of the Witch, if you remember that movie, or The Bees, the Bees, The Wicker Man, but also an actor who in recent times has taken very choicey, meaty, thoughtful projects like Mandy or Pig, which, by the way, Pig, one of my favorite movies of last year, totally snubbed by numerous award organizations. Pig was freaking fantastic of a movie. Anywho, all of that stuff is in here, and if you have a favorite era or version of Nicolas Cage from a movie like Con Air or The Rock, all of those movies get some sort of reference or joke in here, big or small. Some of them really amazingly and some not, but they're all a lot of fun. But while all of that stuff is fun, what I appreciate first and foremost about the movie is actually Nicolas Cage's performance within this, because it could have easily been a very over-the-top, ridiculous, jokey performance. And yet, at all times, Nicolas Cage walks this fine line balance of making us feel like he's both in on the joke, but also, and laughing at himself, but also that he is bringing a sort of nuanced look at him as a person. I mean, actually, if you listen to any of the interviews that Nicolas Cage has given about this movie, there almost seems to be an uncomfortability with him having been in the movie at all. I mean, he has spoken about in some interviews that I've seen where the director always constantly pushed him to go over the top with his version of himself in the movie, him being this isn't actually me. And so there's this interesting line of just a truth behind it while also being in on the joke. It's a very difficult thing because at no point did I feel like the movie broke my immersion in the sense that I didn't believe or buy his performance, and yet I also really felt the truth of the kernel of this characterized version of Nicolas Cage, because obviously this isn't actually Nicolas Cage, but there is probably a kernel of truth in it, and also a kernel of truth in the performance that Nicolas Cage is giving to this version of himself. And it was just very, very wonderful, and I honestly really appreciate it. Was kind of surprised by that. But the other thing too, again, while this concept seems like it could be over the top and hysterical, and there is that in here as well, the other thing that really grounds the film and actually gives it a more emotional resonance than I ever thought it would was the wonderful relationship between Pedro Pascal and Nicolas Cage in this movie. The basic storyline of the movie kind of comes down to Nicolas Cage, the character, is kind of a down-on-his-run actor who is kind of distanced from his own family and from, furthering his acting career, so he takes one last job, which is to go to this foreign country where a millionaire has paid for Nicolas Cage to come to his birthday party, played by Pedro Pascal, who will give him $1 million, and then after that, Nicolas Cage is thinking of retiring, but then has his sort of spirit and love for film and acting and all this stuff reignited by his growing relationship and bond with Pedro's character. And the two of them, you really just, both these actors just bring a sense of like their relationship and caring for each other that builds over the course of the film that I was honestly shocked by. I mean, this movie in many ways, I just kept thinking about it like jokingly, but honestly, truthfully, this movie feels like it was made for those people who are constantly railing against the shipping community for like seeing this romantic tension between two characters on screen and just saying, oh, we need more just non-romantic, platonic, healthy relationships between men. And that's what this movie is. It's just a really beautiful actual like character piece between these two guys, and you just really buy that they managed to reignite and spark their love of film and like just joy at existence and being alive. And they just bring it while also being over the top and hilarious. There's these just scenes of them just being ridiculous, and yet it's just a lot of fun to just watch them do that. And also, this movie just reminded me of how adorable Pedro Pascal is. Like, literally every time he's on screen, you just want to pinch his cheeks because he's just so cute and adorable. He just manages to walk that line between possibly threatening while also being like an earnestly amazing, adorable, wonderful human. And I just really adored Pedro's performance in this film. He just really brought that like a very adorable, earnestly like just like sweet human beings to the film. And also, there's just, like, a lot of kernel of truth within all of the jokes as well. Like, there is a recurring joke about Paddington 2 throughout the film, which is, like, a ridiculous pull for a movie to joke about. And yet, if any of you have seen Paddington 2, you know it's actually a very earnest, optimistic, amazingly emotional film that just makes you cry. And so, like, a lot of the jokes in this film just feel, like, over the top and ridiculous, and yet also truthful at the same time. And it's, again, a great balance to walk. But then also there's this other layer that is added to the film where we basically have this sort of CIA storyline where they recruit Nicolas Cage to spy on Pedro Pascal's character because they believe that he is this drug lord who is doing these very evil things that Nicolas Cage then has to investigate. And so there's this interesting tension, push and pull between these characters being like, oh, is he actually a good guy? Is he not? And the constant like subversion of those expectations in really fun and interesting ways. And I was just along for the ride the entire time. And on top of that, while there is like a meta joke within this film about there needing to be like a hook, like a Hollywood blockbuster style storyline that CIA story kind of embodies, the movie does actually do those sequences rather well. This isn't just a character piece. There are the big bombastic explosion-y like action buddy comedy sort of stuff, but again, grounded by like the meta understanding of it and the jokes about it, while also this really great storyline and relationship. And there actually are some scenes in here that go to some very real places, particularly between the relationship between Nicolas Cage and his characterized family. And I thought that there was like, wow, this is actually pretty deep and honest. And so at the end of the day, what I love most about this film is while I was laughing along with all the meme-fied jokes of Nicolas Cage here that all of us have made and really sort of bring them into like a holistic, like just jokey piece, there is some kernel of really truthful characters like pieces in here about accepting people as they are, about like wanting to pursue your own self and your truest self, but also allowing other people to do the same, and what that means, and sort of evidence of control and things like that. Like it was a very fun movie and deeply enjoyable on every single level. And I honestly think the only like knock I could give it is in the editing. There were some like moments that felt like they were missing, like just connective tissue scenes. I was like, oh, we're here now. Like, I didn't expect to go from that scene to this scene. I guess we're just kind of here in the moment at this point. And it just felt like there was a couple moments here and there that just were missing that kind of threw me out for a hot sec. But then again, there's something to be said, whereas like, if I figured out what was going on and I didn't need those scenes necessarily, then you didn't need the scenes. Cut them out. That's just economy of storytelling. So maybe worthwhile to make that argument, but I also just was like thrown for a few minutes here and there. That's the only piece of this that I really felt was just threw me out at any point, because otherwise it's a fantastic movie. To be honest with all of you, between this movie and Everything Everywhere All at Once, which, by the way, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, Everything Everywhere All at Once, what's with like films having very unwieldy titles this year, but between those two movies, I have been so encouraged and enthusiastic about returning to the movies this past few months. Like, don't get me wrong, I love my big blockbuster films. I love my Marvel films and things like that. I love my Sonic the Hedgehog shoes and all of that stuff. I will always enjoy those to some degree or another. But I had forgotten how much during this pandemic going to a movie theater and seeing movies that like speak to me, both in a fun way, something in showing me something unique that only cinema can do, but also like speaking like truth and like really hitting me emotionally can do, and what that experience brings. And this movie, along with Everything Everywhere All at Once, really did that for me. And The Northman, which I'm also hopefully going to go and see and review in some point this weekend as well, so be on the lookout for that video. Seems like it'll be another movie to do that exact same thing. And so I'm just so encouraged by the continued amazingness of films, despite the past 2 years that have been a hellhole for the world overall, but also in particular for filmmaking. And just again, just encourages me and inspires me as a film creator. And this is a movie right up there with that. So if you're looking for that, or you're just looking for a fun time to just remember our cultural memification of Nicolas Cage, you'll also get that as well. So I hope you enjoy The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. But beyond all of that, I hope that you, as always, my friends, live long and prosper.